Welcome to The Women We Know. I'm your host, Stacey Ferguson, and this podcast is all about real conversations with women in our lives who have stories worth sharing. Not the polished highlight reels, but the real moments, the challenges, the turning points, the courage, the growth, and the wisdom that comes from living a full life. My hope is that somewhere in these conversations, you'll hear something that reminds you that you're not alone and that the women around us are far more extraordinary than we sometimes realize. So wherever you are listening from, settle in, because these are the stories of the women we know. Welcome to the very first episode of The Women We Know. Oh my God, I cannot believe we are here. Pressing record on this feels a little bit scary, but a lot exciting. This has been a dream of mine for quite some time, and I am so grateful to have each and every single one of you here along for the ride with me. Bear with me as I can go off on little tangents or little side quests. So bear with me. This podcast was created to celebrate women, the ones that we know personally, the ones that we admire quietly, and the ones who carry more than they let on. And before I ask anyone else to sit in this seat, I decided that I should go first. This episode is just going to be me, no guest, no interview, just a woman behind the microphone explaining why this exists. I kind of feel like that guy in that movie. I'm just a guy standing in front of a girl asking her to love him. I don't know, what was that movie? But really, I really just wanted to share why this podcast matters so much to me. If you are listening right now, I hope this feels less like a broadcast and more like a conversation, like you're sitting at my kitchen table or out the back having a drink with me, you know. And I wanted to say Happy International Women's Day. So I guess I will start by sharing why I thought it was important that I go first. I think that vulnerability and being real with you guys will really help me to explain my vision for this podcast and community of women who deserve to be celebrated. I guess a few years ago, probably over a decade now, I found myself in a season I really didn't recognize. From the outside, it probably looked fine. I was showing up most days. I was functioning for the most part. I might have looked like I was doing all the things I was supposed to be doing, but on the inside, I was absolutely fading. I was more of a shell of a person. And I suppose after years of wondering why I felt so different, I was finally diagnosed with major depression disorder. I believe this probably stemmed from, although I've never actually confirmed it because I don't know, or back then I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know how to ask for help. But as I kind of reflect on it, I believe that it stemmed from postnatal depression after having my daughter almost 11 years ago now. After probably 5 years of struggling in 2020, when the world seemed like it was falling apart, I ended up stumbling across an online community, and it made me feel like I fit somewhere and that I could have purpose again, which was always a massive big driver for me. I remember when I was a kid or, you know, like a young adult, I was always so ambitious, and I was someone that went after what I wanted, and then somewhere along the line I kind of lost that drive. I don't know if it was becoming a mom or living a life that wasn't exactly how I had imagined in my mind growing up. And I know even today I still kind of struggle with that, plans changing and learning to be okay with that. And I still don't know today whether that's where I kind of lost my way, but like I said, I'm just kind of saying what's on my mind. But back to my point, I guess I found a community of women online that somehow seemed to understand me when I didn't really even understand myself, which at the time it felt massive. These women, and there were some men in this community, believed in me way before I could believe in myself or even think to start believing in myself again. And they seen something in me that I didn't even know I had. And I think the secret behind that is that they let me know that they believed in me, but then they also encouraged me to borrow their belief until I had my own, which I think is pivotal. Like that's quite important, giving me the permission to believe in myself. Yeah, here's some of mine, and that kind of gave me the permission, I guess. That really wasn't something I'd ever experienced in my life. Half of my life, I grew up in Gladstone, and then I moved to a tiny little town, Aramac in central West Queensland. And if you know rural communities, you know that there's a certain culture that comes with that. Women in the bush are incredibly strong. In fact, I think that they're some of the strongest women you'll ever meet. There's a real kind of she'll be right mentality, and you kind of get on with things. If things need fixing, you fix them, or you do what needs to be done and you just keep moving forward. And while there were absolutely celebrations, and when someone achieved something, or if someone reached a big milestone, or there was something to be celebrated, people definitely showed up for that. People in the bush know how to celebrate. But when I look back now, I kind of realize that we didn't always talk about the middle of the journey, the hard parts and the doubts and the feelings, because bush women are tough, and a lot of the time you just keep going. And I think for a long time I carried that too, the idea that you just get on with it and you don't necessarily say when things are heavy. I think in many ways I'm grateful for that, because that kind of shaped my resilience. But then when I circle back, later in life, and I'm in this community of women surrounded by, them who are openly encouraging each other, something shifted in me. These women weren't just out there celebrating when each other hit the finish line or hit the goal or the target. They were cheering each other on while they were still figuring it out, and while they were downing themselves, and while they were in the middle of the hard part. And I kind of was taken aback, and I was like, wow, this is really quite powerful. There was none of that. There was no kind of competition. It was just pure cheering each other on. And that's something that I really want more of for women, not just celebrating each other when we succeed, but supporting each other while we're still becoming. When your friend comes to you and they've got that dream, cheering them on. And when you stop and you look around your life and the women that we know, they're all incredible. Everyday, ordinary women, they are just absolutely extraordinary. You've got the women that are raising families. There's women that are supporting friends or out there starting businesses. There's ones that are surviving hard seasons or showing up for the people they love. And the more I started to listen to their stories, the more I realized that women are really carrying extraordinary stories, but so many of them are holding them so quietly, like protecting them almost, sometimes because they think that they're not important. I know that I was one of those people. Who wants to hear my story, right? What have I got to share? Sometimes because they think everyone else has it harder, so they just need to get on with it. And sometimes it's because no one's ever actually asked them. And I guess that's why The Women We Know was born. The idea came from wanting to actually slow down and listen to the women around me, to celebrate them, to stand with them no matter what season they're in. So each episode I'll get to sit down with a woman I know, a friend, a mentor, a sister, a woman that I really admire, and I'll even get to sit down with some women that I've never met before, because another woman has stepped forward to nominate this woman because they believe their story is worth celebrating. We'll get to talk about the messy middle, the lessons, the triumphs, the challenges. And my hope is that as you listen, you'll see little pieces of yourself in these conversations and maybe even feel a little less lonely on your journey. Today, I guess I was so grateful to go first. I got to share this little snippet of my story with you guys, how I grew up in Gladstone and then moved to a little bush town, some of the battles I faced. And I'm sure as the podcast goes on, I'll have more opportunity to share more with you guys. But most importantly, I got to share about the women who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. And I think that that's who helped shaped this woman that I am today, but also this desire to be able to celebrate other women and kind of scream it from the rooftop. Like, I am pretty blessed to know some pretty incredible women. And I bet if you looked around your circle, you would be like, oh my God, that woman is incredible. Look at what she's doing there, and look at what she's doing there, and look how she showed up, and how kind is that friend, and, you know, the struggles that my mum went through, and, you know, just stuff like that, that you will get to have your eyes open to, I guess, if they're not already. But so before I finish and go off on more little rambles, I really want to leave you with this. The women that we know, our friends, our sisters, our neighbours, the ones that we get to see every day at work, the ones that we see in the school pickup line or even at the grocery store, are quietly carrying stories that are extraordinary. Some stories are of strength, some of heartbreak, some of triumph, some of hope, some of resilience. And when we take the time to really listen, to hear each other, something magical happens. We see each other, we celebrate each other, and sometimes we even see a part of ourselves we forgot existed. And sometimes when I think about my daughter, watching the women around her, I think, you know, it's so important for her to learn what it looks like to support each other, to celebrate each other, and to show strength with kindness. I think this podcast really feels like it's as much for her as it is for all of us, to feel what's possible when women really, truly hear each other. I want to thank you for sticking with me if you have stuck with me to the end, and thank you for listening. And I really cannot wait for you to meet the women we know. And that's a wrap on today's conversation with one of the women we know. If something in today's episode resonated with you, I'd love if you shared it with a woman in your life who might love it too. And don't forget to follow along so you never miss a conversation. And if there's a woman in your life that you know has a story worth sharing, I would love for you to nominate her at The Women We Know on Instagram or Facebook. Or shoot me an email at the.women.we.know.podcast@gmail.com. There's a dot in between each of the words, the.women.we.know.podcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening and being part of this community that celebrates her story, her resilience, her honesty, her triumph, her challenges, her life. We celebrate her.